Have you ever wondered why governments exist, how they were even thought into being, and why they are so diverse? Well, you clicked on the right video. I will answer all of those questions and more. Okay, before we explain all the big, complex, administrative nonsense, we gotta go back, way back, to when the world was filled with nomads, thousands of years before the first cities. Let's look at this guy, Ugg. He has a family, and he manages that family. Just about 5 people. Nothing much. But one day, Ugg had an idea. What if you were to get a bunch of families together and form a group of like 50 people? This is what you call a tribe. Ugg becomes the leader or chieftain of that tribe. He makes some simple rules. No hurt each other. No take from each other. And must listen to Ugg. This is the origin of order. You must sacrifice some freedom of the individual to make things safer. Let's look at another tribe. Their leader is Becht. She would write down what happened and how she won wars, so that following generations will be able to win other wars.
Note to self, river equals good defense.
This is the origin of history. Examples of what to do and what not to do. Anyways, she has an idea. What if she were to get friendly tribes and unite with them? They could all still be separate, but they will work together for a stronger army and more monies. We call this a confederation. Separate countries or tribes losing minor amounts of autonomy for benefits of being one. They usually make a council or elect some leader. However, there are a lot of different types of confederation. There's a catch though. Historically speaking, most confederations fail as one member dominates all the rest. This happened with the Latin League. They had a member you may recognize. Rome suddenly had a taste of power and wanted it all. Rome proceeded to conquer the rest of the Latin League. Tribes and temporary confederations would exist here and there. Tribes would continue to wander until around 8000 BCE. One guy noticed something with the grass. They would discover farming. This would force people to settle and make villages. The people who make and control the food suddenly get bigger houses and, well, are in charge. This is where hierarchy comes into play. I mean, the boss needs some help managing hundreds of people. He has someone to manage all the sales, someone to manage protection, someone to manage the surplus, and so on. This is not just happening in one region, it's happening from Mexico to China. All of this is called the Fertile Crescent, areas where a surplus of crops can create a consistent, rapid growth. The reason why we see the Middle East experience this first is because it's in the middle of everything, and the deserts and mountains provide a great natural defense. These villages continue to develop. At some point, the first cities appear, like Jericho and what?
Interesting, but often confusing names from history, so how do you say it?
Catalhuic. These independent cities are called city-states. City because it's a single city, and state because that just means country. The leaders of these city-states believed their authority came from God or religion. Therefore, leaders would often be high priests or priestesses. That's right, no kings. That's when we entered the Copper Age, as people moved from villages to cities and stone to copper. It's quite fuzzy how we entered this age of copper. There's no real event to kick it into effect. These city-states soon began trade and war with each other in order to gain control. Over time, revolts and conflicts would cause governmental changes. This is how we see monarchy or kingdoms actually appear as you claim ownership of something if your daddy owned it. Egypt and Sumer are the first civilizations to develop a monarchy, but we won't be talking about them today. Let's speak of Sargon. Sargon is very important. He would be the first person to establish an empire. Sargon was abandoned by a priestess. She put him in a basket on a river, which was a common trope for the time. He eventually became a cupbearer and usurped the throne of Kish. Sargon would rule Kish effectively. However, he felt ruling one city was too underwhelming. That's why he conquered a few nearby states. He set up an official language, created an efficient government, and made Akkad the official capital. But Sargon wasn't done. He pushed even further, conquering all the way up to Syria, because he could. This may look small, but this was literally the first empire. The first iPhone may not look cool today, but it certainly was impressive when it came out. But wait, how exactly did he keep his legitimacy? I said originally kingship is based on the idea of hereditary land ownership, but Sargon was an orphan. Then how exactly did he claim this land?
Because God said so.
Really?
Yes, really. Now get back to work, slave.
This is how monarchs would continue to claim land. The idea that a god or multiple gods give you the right to do so. That's what we call divine right. Let's move on to types of monarchy. Now, before I keep moving forward, if you're still confused on what monarchy means, it's basically just if a king or leader dies, their family member inherits the kingdom, usually a son or daughter. But according to culture, it could be everything from the firstborn male to elected by nobles. Now we can get into types. There are three main types: feudal, absolute, and constitutional monarchy. Sargon is considered an absolute monarch. The difference between these is mainly just management. Let me just show you how each works, starting with feudalism. Feudalism was the standard in medieval times. Then take, for instance, medieval France. Okay, France was technically not a single country. It was kind of like 1,000, or what we call counties. Don't worry, I will explain it. Let's zoom into Normandy. There is a big kingdom, or duchy, in the middle of Normandy. Let's say you're one of the many small counts. You have an army and a few towns, but there are 1,000 other counts. So you decide to work with the big duchy next door. The biggest and most powerful duchy of the region offers all the small counties to sign vassal contracts. All the small counts need to do is give some money and troops in return for protection and economic opportunity, recognizing the big one as their lord. Meanwhile, the big duchy technically absorbs all the small counties. This happens in all the different regions of France. Then the biggest one, who tends to own Paris, sends vassal contracts to all the other duchies. This creates the feudal kingdom of France. Now, every once in a while, some of these regions may back away or even join England, but for the most part, they come back to France eventually. This may sound unstable, and it was, but it had some benefits. The many local governments meant when a crisis occurs, it dealt with it fast. Just like that. And possibly more importantly, the lack of both capitalism and communism in the system meant among the counties there was less, competition. So no need to make your workers break their backs over work. There was free lunch, a midday nap, and even in some regions, much shorter work hours. Then for the individual, you may not have had power, but you did have surprisingly good work conditions compared to the stereotypes. Anyways, back to the bigger picture. Feudalism was chaotic and messy. Sure, the French king may have had the most powerful army and the shiniest riches, but all the other nobles' armies combined are many times more powerful. So there's a problem. What if all the nobles disagree with the king on something? There were actually a lot of ways of resolving it, from giving the nobles more power, well, in an aristocracy/noble republic, to giving the church more authority in a ferocracy, to even removing the foundation of it all with a republic. But one of those ways is absolutism, where the monarch holds all the power. No noble or elected official has a say. So starting in the late 16th century, France began its process of absolutism, which was easy and fast. Just kidding. France had 2 civil wars. French wars of religion, a series of conflicts between Catholics and Protestant Huguenots, and in the Fronde, an aristocratic and peasant uprising against the growing centralized power and hefty taxes of Cardinal Mazarin. During the 17th century, Louis XIV would have to figure out how to manage everything right after that chaos. He made up a clever way. He knew all the nobles wanted to be close to him. I mean, if you're close to the king, you'd be pretty cool. So he gave people jobs like making his bed or opening doors for him. He gave all the actual important jobs to people who weren't nobles, diminishing nobility power and strengthening the king's power. Louis also gradually removed noble influence and autonomy. They were even required to live in the Palace of Versailles part-time. By the end of Louis XIV's reign, he had created an absolute monarchy. France was now a single country.
L'État, c'est moi!
Of course, absolutism wasn't the only way to reform a kingdom. Across the Channel in England, there was a different way of doing things. They still had a feudal system. However, ever since the Anglo-Saxons carved out their own kingdoms in Britain, they had informal councils of clergies and nobles, called a witan. But as centuries passed and Normans conquered, the system became old. So in 1215, nobles forced King John of England to accept limits, signing the Magna Carta. In 1295, Edward I would summon a parliament of knights and nobles. This was the House of Lords and the House of Commons. In 1642, it all came crashing down.
I am abolishing you.
Why? Is it because I eat my own earwax whenever I feel under the weather?
What? No, you're just a bad king.
Well, you're abolished!
No, you're abolished.
Then it is a civil war!
Civil war broke out between the Parliament and King Charles I. The Parliament won, making Oliver Cromwell Lord Protector.
So how are you going to rule?
With me as dictator. Lord Protector.
So what's the first order of business?
No more Christmas, no more feathers, no more dancing, and no Plug Monday.
What? Not plus Monday. You are to be hanged. Oh.
By 1660, the king was back, and the parliament was now strengthened. But just 28 years later, the Glorious Revolution of 1688 would create the Bill of Rights, making Parliament the sovereign. This is what we call a constitutional monarchy. There are a lot of ways of doing it, but most of the time it just restricts the monarch power and has a few republic elements. Over time, however, this parliamentary monarchy would write numerous reforms. The liberals would take control, establishing a democracy. Well guys, that's really all I have for today. If you want more stuff like republics, ferocracies, and oligarchies, then make this video get 10 likes for a part 2. Okay, see you in the next video, and remember, don't forget to drink your water.
They tell me Jesus walks, I tell them money talks, blink, got me chill cause I'm